After the protesters had occupied the foyer of the building for some time, Rio Tinto executives agreed to meet a delegation of the women upstairs. Led by Jenny George, the group took their case to the top, only to be told that management in Sydney had no control over the Queensland coal division of the company. Having come so far, they pressed on regardless.
Why don't you give our jobs back? Because all we want is our jobs back. We had them, and why can't you rehire us? You're hiring other people, but you aren't even looking at our husbands.
And it's about time people learn. We are workers out there, and we deserve just as much right to have our jobs without the multinational companies like yourselves and take them away from us for no reason.
I think, you know, we said that we would receive a small delegation of people, and I think we've done that. So we'll pass on your messages.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. We overweight?
It was a long way to come for very little result, and Evelyn Weller couldn't keep the disappointment from her voice when she reported back to the protesters in the foyer.
He promised us that he would convey our messages on, and hopefully we will get a hearing up there through our own Rio Tinto. Workers united will never be defeated. The workers united will never be defeated. I'll tell you that when I left there and went back to my motel, I was emotionally and physically drained. It really... I wish the company would have the guts to come and talk to us women, because as far as I'm concerned, they're not the ones that are sitting at home raising their children and having to deal with the everyday pressures that we have.
Out at the Gordonstone mine, Rio Tinto has its own everyday pressures as it tries to bring production back online after almost 20 months of inactivity. Mine manager Ross Hannigan says it's not a good time to be starting up an Australian coal mine.
We have to re-establish our reputation in the marketplace. Anything that's interrupted supply for so long, you can understand it's an issue. On top of that, you've got the general downturn in the industry, and to sell your coal, you've really got to be competitive price-wise.
Against that background, the last thing Rio Tinto wants to do is meet with the wives of the sacked miners.
But it's not our basis of going and having major discussions with people who aren't our employees about the conditions that apply in this workplace. I mean, it doesn't make common sense. What we're about is running a business here, and it's not a social experiment.
The official line from Rio Tinto is that they are employing new workers purely on merit. The company doesn't care if they worked at Gordonstone under ARCO, and it doesn't care if they're in a union.
Now, they can be in a union, and that's their freedom to do so, but the certified agreement does set out the relationship between management and employees, and we would think that they would have to comply with that.
What that means is that Rio Tinto runs Gordonstone with a non-union agreement. You can be in a union, but it can't represent you or have any role in your working arrangements.
You know, you have a choice. If you don't wish to work consistent with that agreement, then you can't work here. No one's forcing anybody to work on this site.
Faced with that choice, there are some former Gordonstone workers who did apply for jobs back at the mine and were successful. Some were ex-CFMEU members, many more were not. Very few were willing to talk to us, which is hardly surprising given the abuse handed out to those who are seen as betraying the union line.
It had its varying moments depending on the activity on the picket line. It was particularly hard well, it was hard at first because there was a lot of people that were on that picket line with your work colleagues, and you felt for them. They were retrenched and out of work. As time got on, you tended to harden a little bit to that. A lot of the abuse came on, and you did harden to it.
I think everybody's just sick and tired of it at the moment. It's just gone on for so long. I think everybody just wants it over and done with and get back to business as usual.
At the end of the day, men like Brad and John were more interested in working at the mine than in an argument over industrial relations.
Well, I'd got a taste for the job, and I really liked the job, and I thought, well, you know, that's where I want to be, and that's what I want to do, so yeah, here I am again.
What you're trying to do is make certain that the employees that you have are people that want you to succeed. They want to work with you and be part of that success.
The Gordonstone mine is without doubt the biggest industrial hotspot in the Australian coal industry, but it's not an isolated example. The whole industry is under pressure to reform, to become more productive and more flexible. International competition in our export markets is tough and getting tougher. Over the past few years, all over the Australian coal industry, from the Hunter Valley to Queensland's Bowen Basin, companies have been tackling the issue of workplace reform, often facing strong resistance from the union. The federal government's new laws accelerated that process. Less than an hour's drive from the Gordonstone mine is Oakey Creek, an MIM mine that encapsulates the radical change underway in the coal industry. After a year of relentless and often hostile negotiation, the company reached an agreement with its employees that stripped away outdated work practices and turned a loss-making mine into a profitable venture.
There's still a collective agreement. I don't think we've got a company that's out and out to destroy the union, although I would say they're fairly hard-nosed about what they want.
You need to understand that climate of confrontation in the whole coal industry to understand why the Gordonstone dispute has gone on so long. Mines all over Australia are shedding staff, cutting costs and changing work practices. Many of them are losing money. But Gordonstone was a record-breaking mine, producing more coal than its own wash plant could handle. The mass sacking of workers, when it happened, was in clear breach of Peter Reith's new industrial laws. But in the grand scheme of things, that hardly seems to matter.
Now, it's not for me to defend ARCO, I don't. But then again, I don't automatically, leap to the defence of the CFMEU, given their long history of breaking agreements.
When pressed on the matter, the Minister agreed that the original sacking of the Gordonstone miners may well have been wrong, but suggests that it's time to move on.
Well, I mean, the government is not running the mine. I mean, we are one step back. We have a responsibility for the legislative framework. People took action, compensation was paid, and I think in the final analysis, whatever the competing views were, the rights and wrongs of past actions by a company that's no longer there, you're still confronted with the reality of needing to get the mine back into operation and to provide the employment opportunities that does.
Rio Tinto, through its subsidiary Pacific Coal, hopes to resume full production at Gordonstone later this month under its non-union agreement. When that happens, the town of Emerald will start to slowly recover from the economic and social impact of the dispute. But the sacked workers and their families won't be able to move on so quickly. That's as true today as it was 20 months ago.